You know, I've really only ever had one beef in the game, one dog in the fight, so to speak, and that's pro-science. And there's a very simple reason for that. The knowledge that we have gained through the scientific method is primarily what distinguishes our very luxurious first world lifestyle, the smartphone lifestyle, from what you would get in the third world or the medieval period, where people would be burning witches to ward off evil spirits to save the crops. Now, in that service of that goal, I fought against all sorts of anti-science people. I fought against creationists when they were trying to get the controversy taught in schools. I battled feminists when they were causing all sorts of problems in universities, and the same with Black Lives Matter. And I've debunked all sorts of pseudoscience. The bottom line is that I'm really not here as a crowd pleaser. I'm here to fight for science. I mean, it's almost a tautology that inevitably, if you're going to actually debunk something, you're gonna piss some people off. Nor, like many professional YouTubers, am I here to essentially make money on YouTube. And you can see that going way back. I mean, I was on YouTube for something like 5 years, making videos debunking all sorts of crap before I got a single bean of YouTube. And even now, when I have some very generous sponsors from Patreon, turns out that I actually counted. I only put about 1 video in 5 into that Patreon supported feed. And there's a reason for that. Is because that's enough for me to not have to worry. If I want to make some nice video, I need to buy some stuff for it. That's plenty to do that sort of thing. And once you get to that sort of level, what's the point of being greedy? And so yeah, it works out that only about 1 video in 5 goes into the Patreon supported feed. I like to think those are the ones which will stand the test of time, that people will be able to look back on in 10 years time and they will still be good, they will still be relevant. Not this sort of volatile stuff that, you know, opinions on politics or any of that sort of crap. So yeah, 1 video in 5 goes into the Patreon supported feed. Those are just the bulk numbers for, it's a few years now. And I think you'll be pretty hard pushed on YouTube to find someone else with that sort of restraint. So yeah. Principally, I'm not here to pander to crowds, which is why I bust an absolute gut over the weekend making this Trump video, which I knew would get me a shitload of grief. Now, in those 10 years on YouTube, I've seen all sorts of populists, and many of them have grown way beyond me. So I remember way back when I was bigger than both InfoWars, you know, Alex Jones and the Young Turks. And I watched how they grew and overtook me, and now they both get over 1 million hits per day. Way more than I do. But, you know, this is the thing, it's really quite easy to do the sort of thing they do. You know, you just have an opinion on some news and come on, this is accessible to anyone. Or with Alex Jones, they're just a paranoia merchant who end up selling their magic beans, their massively overpriced magic beans, to protect you from how the government is poisoning you. And then once you get into this sort of thing, the formula is so painfully simplistic that you just get some viral news story of the day and pass some banal, tepid, middle-of-the-road opinion like, well, I can see why some people like Trump in that he's a strong man. He doesn't take any crap off anyone. But also, I'm not so sure about some of his policies about building walls and the such like. And then, having given some sort of completely unoffensive opinion, you go for the audience participation. Well, that's what I think. I want to know what you think. So please leave a comment below. Oh, and of course, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. But anyway, one of the reasons this sort of thing is so popular, of course, is once you get into politics, everyone thinks that they know it all. Everyone. Everyone. And so, yeah, I know what you're thinking, but it really doesn't matter whether they're libertarians or liberals or right-wing or whatever. I mean, if they're libertarians, they'll tell you that if you're not a libertarian, then you've just made the state your god. And you worship the state like a god. You are a statist. Or if you're not a liberal, then you're obviously just a racist homophobe who hates women. Or if you're not right-wing, then you just want to tax and spend. You just want to spend other people's money. And of course, if you're not alt-right, then you're just a salty cuck who should stay out of politics. Oh yeah, and I get that a lot, that I should stick to science and, leave politics to the anti-vaxxers. Yeah, I fight for a cause, and that cause is science, and so it should come as a surprise to no one that the guy who is an anti-vaxxer, the guy who thinks that vaccines cause autism, does nothing for me. Or the guy who thinks that global warming is just a conspiracy or some crap, and denies that it has anything to do with man-made activities, that guy does nothing for me. Or that the platform that wants to teach the controversy, that wants us to have creationism taught in schools, does nothing for me. So sure, Trump won. The anti-science candidate won. Odd thing is though, if you take a look at the comments on my video or on my Twitter feed, you'll get the distinct impression that people, maybe through projection of some sort, see this as some personal defeat for me, rather than, say, for instance, a self-inflicted wound that they've done on themselves. So let me give you an example. Let's say I debunked the water sea, this thing that's going to pull water out of the air, completely and utterly, which I did. And it still keeps pulling in money, which it does. It's pulled in over $250,000. And these people from the water sea come by, they didn't, but just say for sake of argument they did, and they say, you're just salty because you're jealous of our brilliant water seer idea. Well, actually, now that I come to think about it, that is more or less what happened with solar roadways. That I got a load of people coming by and saying that you're just a shill for whatever, big oil, or you're salty that you didn't think about it, or something like that. Now, true, with solar roadways, the number of people who have been sort of criticising me for that has diminished over time, which may be something to do with the fact that they were just gloating over a massive self-inflicted wound. Or maybe another example, just think of a doctor or something, and he tells the patient, don't shoot yourself in the leg, you'll probably kill yourself. And the patient looks at him and sort of looks at his leg and shoots himself in the leg, and then sits there with a shit-eating grin on his face saying, you're salty because I didn't die. I mean, you'll recall at the beginning of this video I mentioned that, that the knowledge that science has delivered us is really the only thing that maintains our first world lifestyle. Well, there are two choke points, two obvious choke points that mankind is coming up to. The first one is the antibiotics resistance. Now, we've had antibiotics for about 100 years, and over that time, due to a lot of scientific illiteracy, we've used those antibiotics recklessly and industrially. And because, of course, you put this huge evolutionary pressure on the bacteria by putting all those antibiotics out there, an evolution that half of the Trump-Pence ticket doesn't believe in. But because of that, you've now actually got these genes, these antibiotic resistance genes that are widespread in the gene pool. Now, those are going to be there for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And as someone who is pretty close to the drug design type area, I can tell you there really isn't a lot that will ever be able to replace these. So in other words, we've blown it with the antibiotics. It's not so much a matter of, if this becomes a problem, it's a matter of when. And when you do get this widespread antibiotic resistance, even mundane things like a paper cut or something can turn into a life-threatening condition. And virtually all operations, I mean, it's a complete game changer. At the moment, if you've got a bad appendix or something, they just chop you open, chop the appendix out, sew you back up, give you some antibiotics, and you're more or less done. If all of a sudden you lose that ability to have the antibiotics be effective, these things again become life-threatening conditions. And you know what's not going to help here? Is someone with the scientific illiteracy that they think that vaccines cause autism as the president. Second significant choke point that we're coming up to is related to global warming, and not in these sort of minor issues about how we're going to get more storms or something like that. Yeah, I mean, the rising sea level, it'll see off a few cities and the such like, and you'll have to relocate a few million people. But those are maybe those are more things you can take in your stride. Things that you can't take in your stride are related to the rainfall, right? At the moment, we need the crops, and for the crops you need the rain and the ice pack on the mountains that gives you the runoff for summertime, right? Without those, you can't grow the crops, and if you can't grow the crops, you're in a world of hurt. How the economy is doing will be the last thing on your mind. Now, honestly, there's probably not a lot that any single nation can do about that, because it's a sort of global problem, and one nation acting unilaterally is not going to help. But let's be real, having a president who denies that this is happening at all is not going to help. But isn't this exactly the problem? That, if you want to understand problems, then you need to know all sorts of things like what's the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, what's its extinction coefficient, what's the heat flow like. These are not things that most people care about when they're voting. All they care about is, I like Trump because he's got a nice smile and he says that he's going to make America great again, and he's going to do terrific deals with people. He's going to do good deals because no one loves people like Donald Trump. Yet for a lot of people, they vote on how it makes them feel, not on the facts. Facts are difficult. Feelings are easy. And yeah, a lot of these people get very riled when you actually start pissing them off by telling them things that are true, like Trump is an anti-vaxxer. And yeah, another criticism I got a lot on that video, which I guess is expected, that I didn't spend equal amounts of time showing how bad Hillary was to how bad Trump was. No. You don't have to spend equal amounts of time showing how things are bad in order to be fair and unbiased. I don't have to spend equal amounts of time showing that creationism is bullshit as criticizing evolution. And yeah, I don't greatly care about what is popular thing. I care about what is correct, which is why when you get things like this Fontus water bottle, they can very easily claim that, hey, we're successful. We got over $250,000 for this. Time tends to tell a different story on these things. Like, for instance, with Brexit, where, oh God, did I have all sorts of people telling me how out of touch and how I hated democracy and all that sort of thing. That, just like with the solar roadways, has petered off significantly over time. And the main reason for that is because Brexit, as some predicted, has become a complete shit show, and is especially a complete shit show for British science. Well, I could go on and on about Brexit, but I don't have to. Time is telling the story quite nicely for me. And sure, if by some miracle it does turn out in the long game that I'm wrong, I'm perfectly fine with that. Reality is what it is. But I wouldn't hold my breath. Just like I wouldn't hold my breath for those who are absolutely convinced that solar roadways will be perfectly fine once we've ironed out all of the kinks. Now, ironically, Trump probably can't do as much damage in the White House as Brexit will do to Britain, in that the whole American system is basically geared up to sort of stop you from doing stuff. It's a sort of safeguard that you want to slow politicians down from doing stuff. And so we'll see what damage you can get from having an anti-vaxxer, climate change denial, pro-creation ticket in the White House. Either way, I'm going to be here giving my independent, critical analysis of these things based on the facts and maybe a little fun. Because love me or hate me, I calls them how I sees them.